Thanks for tuning in to more NFL talk on the OFN Today as the NFL's final 2 weeks begin on Saturday with three teams fighting for playoff spots and positioning. Ted Sevransky of Covers.com and I will preview all the key games this weekend, while Scott Engel of RotoExperts.com is here a little bit later on to help with Fantasy Football Championship Week strategies as the OFN Today for this Thursday, the 20th of December, 2018, starts now. This edition of the OFN Today is brought to you by ourlads.com, home of the best depth charts on the net, RotoExperts.com for great in-depth fantasy football analysis and insights, and Covers.com featuring live score, stats, and odds, and is considered the most convenient and entertaining source for sports news and facts with over 45 million visits a year. All right, so I was doing some research for playoff scenarios around the NFL on Tuesday, and I couldn't believe the crap info on the net that was out there, thanks to writers today who believe that they're smarter than anyone else. They have wit. I don't know what it is, but it's one thing for ESPN and for us sports fans to have to constantly see and even now hear about some of the anchors and broadcasters talk about winning percentages or team percentages or season percentages. But it's like, do they have a deal with somebody? Is this because I don't see anything out there. It's like sponsored by. I mean, I can understand if the percentages were sponsored by, but I don't see that. It's like, why is everybody talking about these percentages that mean nothing? I'm sorry, they don't, unless you want to use them for gambling. And if you do want to use it for gambling, well, then specify it. And again, have a sponsor. Talk about that. But to throw that out there, like if we want, and look, there's anybody, and this is why I actually am conflicted about whether or not this does have to do with gambling, because I'm looking for information on playoff scenarios. Now, here's an example. SB Nation's The Finsider. All right, I'm going to read this. There are still, I'm looking for Miami Dolphin playoff scenarios, okay? This is what I get from the SB Nation's The Finsider. There are still ways for Miami to make the playoffs. If they win out, beating the Jacksonville Jaguars and Buffalo Bills in weeks 16 and 17, with no other results, the Dolphins would move up to an 18% chance to make the playoffs. Okay. Well, what the fuck does that mean? If the Titans lose to the Washington Redskins in Week 16, Miami jumps to 49% chance to make the playoffs. All right. Well, once again, add in a Colts loss to the New York Giants in Week 16, and the Dolphins are up to a 67% chance of seeing the postseason. So there are ways to rebound, but it takes a lot of the right teams losing at the right times to get there. That's it. That is their playoff scenarios column. They give me nothing. What the fuck do I care about percentages for? What does the percentages have to do with anything? Tell me who needs to win. I want to see it. If this team and that team loses and the Dolphins win the next 2 weeks, the Dolphins are in the playoffs. That's all I care about. I don't need percentages. I mean, if you want to throw percentages in an article, can you please at least throw the other important information into? If you want to act smart and witty, go ahead, put this paragraph in there, and then go ... Here's the real information for you. But it drives you crazy. It drives me crazy. So, in other words, as I welcome in Ted Sevransky from Covers.com, I absolutely have no idea what the Dolphins need, other than I do know, Ted, that they are up to a 67% chance of seeing the postseason with all that other good stuff happening. So, it's just ridiculous.
Sure. If Indy loses to the Giants as, what are they, 9.5-point favorites in that ball game?
Yeah.
And if Tennessee loses straight up as 10.5-point favorites against the Redskins, then that will improve Miami's chances, no question. But Miami still got to win.
That's true.
And I mean, look, it is very easy to criticize, and I don't even know if mainstream media sources is the right thing. When it comes to gambling content from mainstream media sources.
Mm-hmm.
They don't bet, they don't know.
No, they don't.
If you don't bet, if this isn't something you're doing, if you're trying to write an article as a writer who doesn't bet, and all right, well, I got to write a betting column. And there's people out there that have to do that now. Because all of a sudden, sports betting it's becoming more and more mainstream.
Yep.
What's it legalized in 9 states now? And D.C. is going to be next, and on and on. They're saying there could be 30 states by the end of 2019. So all this is becoming mainstream, and everyone wants content, but no one knows how to do it. So hopefully you and I can do a better job than some of the mainstream stuff at breaking down these playoff scenarios. But from a handicapping standpoint, none of it makes a lick's worth of difference, not even a little bit.
No.
And you say, oh, what's the scenario for Miami? Well, Miami's got to win this week. So what do? Let's break down the Dolphins and the Jags and see if Miami's capable of doing that. And then you worry about the Week 17 scenarios after Week 16 is done. Well, I'm not approaching this like a fan. Fans got to worry about playoff scenarios.
No, that's true.
All I got to worry about is the games in front of me on the card and how they match up for this week. And that focus, in my mind, is much better than the bigger focus here. If you start worrying about playoff scenarios, you can get yourself, go down 15 different rabbit holes that aren't going to help you this week figure out what to do in the NFL. So hopefully we can shine some light on some of these matchups and help you in that regard.
Well, we got 2 Saturday games, which is good. We have Washington, Tennessee kicking it off. Matter of fact, if you look at it, I said 3 of the teams. I should have said 4. All 4 teams actually have a chance for the playoffs. I kind of still don't look at Washington as a realistic chance, but they do. They still have a chance. It's very slim. They're 8th seed. They're tied with Philly. They're a half game back in Minnesota for the wild card, game back at Dallas for the East. They can win the East with 2 wins and 2 Dallas losses and a Philly loss. So that's pretty much the most easiest way I can explain that. And again, this is actually one site that gave me good information, so that's why I'm reading it. Also can clinch, including with 2 wins and 2 losses by Minnesota, Seattle. You can forget that. Or 2 wins and a Minnesota, Philly loss. So yeah, let's just go and it's just really the most important reason that their hopes are slim. Let's just forget about that. They got to beat Tennessee, and they're a 10-point dog for a reason. They got Josh Johnson at quarterback. And they barely came back to beat Jacksonville. Good for them. Nice little comeback. 6 minutes to go. They came back, tied it, won it on the buzzer. So that's good for them that they did that. But to expect Josh Johnson 2 weeks in a row for this team, I mean, Jacksonville's one thing. They're going in a completely different direction. Tennessee's going in a good way. Big couple of wins for them. They're at home. They feel comfortable there. They got a big game next week against the Colts. They're going to make the playoffs with a couple of wins. They also, of course, need a loss from either Baltimore or Pittsburgh, and I think that could happen. So this is a huge game for Tennessee, and I'm okay giving 10. I don't like giving 10 too often, but in this spot with Josh Johnson looking for a second straight win, I don't think this game will be close.
Yeah, I mean, Baltimore and Pittsburgh are both underdogs this week. So when you talk about, can either of those 2 teams lose? Yeah, they can. Both of them are supposed to lose on Sunday, but we talk about the Redskins and Washington, a team that no one is respecting in the betting markets, not even a little bit.
No.
I cashed a winner with them last week at Jacksonville, but it was as much a fate of the Jaguars, a 7.5-point favorite as it was any other factor. That being said, the Redskins are alive. Their defense is still playing, and they're not in a situation where this is a hopeless team going on the highway for a late-season road game. It's not a hopeless scenario. And Tennessee has shown the ability to win by margin in recent weeks. They had the blowout win over the Jags. They had the win over the Giants last Sunday that, at 17-0, they got the job done. But it wasn't, and I haven't seen enough out of Tennessee to say, they're going to smack this team down. They're going to throttle them.
No, they're not a pretty team. That's the thing.
They're not built to win that way.
No.
I mean, it's Derrick Henry left, Derrick Henry right, and then, hope it's 3rd and short, so Mariota doesn't throw a pick. I'm not inclined to lay a big price with the Tennessee Titans in this ballgame. If I had to play it,
well, there's
I could
other
only
games.
look for Redskins plus the points.
Yeah, there's other games out there. Again, double digits, not in the NFL. It's not always the way you want to go. Matter of fact, if I'm going to go double digits, I might as well just take the Rams against Arizona. even though it's 14, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. But, here's the question. Why did it take Tennessee, 13, 14 games this season to finally decide we're going to hand the ball off to Derrick Henry? I mean,
good question.
For about a month or so, it was Dion Lewis was the number one running back. I mean, and he's a nice little back, but you have Derrick Henry. Just run the football. And now they're finally doing that, and they're winning.
Sure, but I mean, they faced the right teams at the right times in recent weeks. When you talk about, all right, hey, beating the Jaguars on a Thursday night, hey, that'll work. We have the Giants, OBJ sitting. The Giants have just won 4-5. They're fat and happy. Boom, a win there. They knocked off the Jets before that. And we've seen this Tennessee team beat some good teams at home. We saw them beat the Texans early in the season, the Jaguars, the Eagles, the win against the Cowboys, the blowout over the Patriots. They've been capable of knocking off quality foes, but more often than not, Tennessee's played up or down to their level of competition. And when you talk about teams I'm comfortable laying doubles with in the NFL, the Titans, probably not one of them.
All right. Again, next week's game, probably one of the better games in the league next week. We'll talk about that next week for sure when they host the Colts. By the way, Logan Ryan out for the year, so that's a big blow in their secondary. Let's go to the Saturday night game. It's Baltimore and the Chargers. Chargers favored by 4.5 in this one, coming off one of the biggest wins they've had in a long time, finally stopping the Kansas City Hex, also putting them now in a position to actually win the division. So, look, the Chargers can wind up in second, be a fifth-place team, and they'll be expected. But they are now putting all the pressure on the Chiefs, which we'll get into in a little bit, about all of a sudden the Chiefs are now, if they lose one of these games and the Chargers win out, then the Chiefs could be a 5 seed after dominating for most of the season. And look, I just like the way the Chargers are playing. I don't like taking them at home very much, just in this home environment that they have. It's just not good. But I just feel after the way that they performed against the Chiefs, the gut check with Keenan Allen going down, and but that's another question. I mean, I've been sitting there all year waiting for Mike Williams to do something. Keenan Allen goes down. Mike Williams all of a sudden looks like an all-pro. And it's like, okay, well, where has he been in this offense? Why does he have to wait for? Why did the offense and Ken Wisenhunt need to wait for Keenan Allen to go down, for Mike Williams to basically just take over his spot, and then he's having a great game? Why don't you use both of them in the offense? Because you got two really good receivers. So maybe that'll help this week with Keenan Allen expected to play. Melvin Gordon is the big addition. He'll be back and ready to go. So I just like the way they're going. Lamar Jackson, look, we've talked about this before. This is just going to go on as long as it can. They're 4-1 in their last 5 with that overtime loss to the Chiefs. I think this is going to be another loss. I'm not even sure Baltimore is going to make the playoffs, to tell you the truth. I'm going to go ahead and take the Chargers in this one. I actually like this game a lot. I know it's not a game that, because the Ravens are playing well, that you would probably normally think that. This is just a feeling that the Chargers, after the Kansas City game, are going to feel really good about themselves, and I think they're going to go out and prove it on Saturday night.
Yeah, I worry about the Chargers being a little fat and happy in this game. I mean, that was a big win. Remember, they stole that game. I cashed a ticket with the Chargers. They were not a right side. 5 minutes left, they're down 2 touchdowns, and they found a way to steal it.
Sure.
And in large part because they kept on dropping the Phillip Rivers interceptions. The Chiefs had a couple of balls in their hands and couldn't come down on the ground with them. I worry about L.A. winning this game by margin. And again, they don't just have to win. Now they have to win against, and let's call Baltimore's defense what it is. It's elite. You're going to talk about the best defense in the NFC? Sure, the Bears are going to win that battle. You talk about the best defense in the AFC? You make a pretty good argument for Baltimore in that regard. Certainly on a yards per play basis, the Ravens have been great. But one thing we do not trust Baltimore to do in the slightest is to come from behind. If Lamar Jackson has to throw the football, Baltimore is going to lose. They are probably going to lose by margin. So this handicap really comes down to one question, one fundamental question for me. Can the Ravens move the ball on the ground against the Chargers' run defense? And I think they can. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Baltimore move the ball effectively here. And I know that Baltimore's been beating up on the weak lately. They really have. But you're talking about laying points with the team that, look at their last 3 wins. They beat the Steelers by 3. They stole that game, too. They beat the Chiefs by 1, and they beat the Bengals by 5. They're not blowing teams out of the water. That's not the way the Chargers are built. It's just not the way they built. And Phillip Rivers, why? Here's a Hall of Fame quarterback who has really done very little in the playoffs in his entire career. Why? Phillip Rivers throws a lot of balls into traffic. That's been his MO throughout his career. And I know, Phillip Rivers, he's great, all that. That's why Phillip Rivers hasn't won a Super Bowl, all right, or hasn't been to a Super Bowl. He makes too many mistakes, and this is a defense that can take advantage of those mistakes, unlike the one he faced last week. I'm in no rush to lay anything with the Chargers here. It'd be Baltimore or pass for this better.
Well, I don't think there's any question. If you take a look at, I'm very particular when it comes to elite quarterback. The term elite. I know this was a topic right after Eli won his second Super Bowl. There were actually some, in my opinion, some foolish people that were trying to put him in elite category. I said, for what? For playing good for 2 months in his career? I mean, that's not an elite quarterback. Just winning 2 Super Bowls doesn't make you an elite quarterback.
No, it means you had a good defense and a receiver who can catch balls against his head.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm particular. It's like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. So those are like elite. That's it. I don't go much further than that. Then I get to the next category, and I do put Phillip Rivers in the next category. It's a bigger category, and I put him there. Look, he hasn't been in the playoffs in a while. I do think that this is without question. This is why they were my pick to win the Super Bowl beginning of the season, that this is the best team he's had in a long time. He hasn't had a good defense. He hasn't had a decent offensive line. He hasn't had a running game. He hasn't had receivers. So can he win in this postseason and be the quarter? Absolutely. Am I looking at him and going, I'm worried about Phillip Rivers in the play? No, I'm not. Can he play bad? Yeah, we've seen him, like you said, we've seen him make dumb mistakes before that you just shake your head. You go, what is he doing at this stage of his career? But I think with the team that he has now, that's why I brought up Mike Williams. That's why you said they only won by 5. They only won by 3. They only won. And, 2 of those games, they had Mike Williams and Keenan Allen on the field, and they're not both doing. This is what I'm talking about. Maybe this is Ken Wisenhunt's fault, but I think they can win these games bigger because they do have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, but for some reason they don't use them both in the same game. So maybe this was the one game finally that maybe Ken Wisenhunt will wake the freak up and realize that you've got a stud receiver and you got another stud receiver. Use them at the same time.
Yeah, this might be a great game for live betting, in my opinion, as opposed to
that's true.
Kickoff betting.
If the Chargers get off to a lead,
if Baltimore's able to run the football, they're going to be able to run the football, and if they can't, they can't. And really, in my mind, it's going to be like you'll know within 2 series if the Ravens have a chance in this game or not.
And the other thing, let's keep in mind, too, and this is important, this is Lamar Jackson's first game on national TV. So this is...
he played a couple of those in college.
And he didn't play well. So remember, he never won the big one in college.
I remember him playing pretty well on national TV when they rolled Florida State. The game that started his whole Heisman.
You're okay. Well... That was a day game.
His final year at Louisville wasn't as good, but of course it wasn't. I mean, he should have gone out. He didn't go out the year before, but they graduated 4 of their 5 linemen. They graduated 4 senior linemen. Of course, his final season wasn't going to be what the junior season was.
Well, he'll get his chance here. We'll see if he can throw the football, because he may have to do that one of these weeks. All right, let's go to the next game, and let's talk about Houston and Philly. And the defending Super Bowl champs with a huge win. We both talked about Nick Foles as the X factor going into that game last week, and he certainly looked the part. Look, it wasn't last year's offense. It's still, and I'm not sure it's still going to be, especially with Jay Ajayi out and so forth. But the difference wasn't just about there's no way the Eagles even come close to winning that game. I'm sorry if Carson Wentz is in the game. There's just something going on with Carson Wentz. And again, injury, whatever, attitude. But Foles, I think, completely changed the attitude of this team out there. Throw in the fact, of course, we'll get to golf in a little bit, that he's just not playing well. But this is a huge win for the Eagles, and Houston lucky to beat the Jets. We talked about that being a close game. I can't believe they actually got lucky enough to cover the game. We both thought that Houston it would be a close game and they could win and not cover. I actually thought Jets could beat them. So, and look, they didn't play particularly well. Once Lamar Miller went out, he's still questionable. Maybe even should be doubtful for the game right now. Why even play him? I don't think he's going to play. And if he doesn't play, maybe. And the Jets don't have a great defense. Eagles don't have a great defense. That's a good thing for the Eagles. That means if the Jets can sack them and basically cause the Texans to get lucky enough to hit Watkins a couple of times, and that's all they got to do, well, that's one thing because that's the Jets. This is the Eagles. They're still a better team than the Jets, and I think what happened last week with the Eagles is going to carry over. I just think I feel good now about taking the Eagles. I can't believe I feel good about taking the Eagles again, especially since it's only a couple of points.
Yeah, but who's the better team?
Who's
the better team right now, Houston or Philly?
Well, again, who's the better team? If this right now, again, that's kind of tough because I'm picked the Eagles. I think
right, yeah, and I don't think Philly's a better team.
Okay,
and this is a game where the better team, the better team's got to win, just win and cover. Philly's not the better of these two teams. And look, Goff stunked it up last week again, and with his third straight miserable game. Clearly, the Rams have some issues on their offensive line. I thought the Texans was, and when you're talking about the scariest receivers in the NFL, Hopkins is the scariest. I know he doesn't get the hype as some of the other guys do. Hopkins is the scariest receiver in the NFL. He catches everything that gets thrown in his direction. It's insane what he does. Going against a secondary that has no healthy cornerbacks, and you want to lay points with that team, knock yourself out. Foles had his fun last week. They got a good track record against the Rams. They beat him in L.A. last year. They beat him again this week and last week. And most of that was just Goff stinking. Foles moved the football. L.A. didn't play well. L.A. hasn't played well. Houston's playing well. This is a confident team. This is the better of the two teams, and they're catching points. So I could only take the Texans plus if I was getting involved in this. Philly off a national TV win last week. That was their last hurrah. Eagles ain't going to the playoffs.
Well, it's going to be real tough for the Eagles to go to the playoffs because they lost to the Cowboys twice. That's really going to hurt them. But all right, I mean, we'll disagree on this one. I like the Eagles a lot. I'm not. Houston was very lucky to beat the Jets last week.
That was last week.
And but look, the reason why I liked the Jets last week wasn't just because it was just a matchup or something. Houston just is a different team on the road. Deshaun Watson is a little erratic. You take the running game out, which is so important for this team. They don't. There's no way this is a 10-win team without the running game.
Correct.
And now that you take the running game out, that's why I'm saying if Lamar Miller does not start in this game, and he's actually played a lot better than I think I've ever seen him play, then that makes Deshaun Watson one-dimensional, and it makes and by the way, the Rams, I know Goff didn't play well, but still, I mean, you got Cooks and you still have Woods, and so there's still receivers, and it's still a passing game, a little bit of it, and Houston's got Watkins. That's what they got. So and the Jets are stupid enough because Todd Bowles is dumb enough when he was asked about every other team mirrors Watkins with their best corner. So you paid Tremaine Johnson $77 million. Why didn't you mirror Watkins? Well, we didn't do it that way because we're playing guys. We got to play against all the Texans receivers. That was his explanation. We had to put Mo Claiborne on him, who's getting paid like $5 million, and he's just going to say, "Well, we got to worry about all the receivers, not just one." So whether that's just BS or not, there's a reason for it, and he's not explaining it. I think we just got the reason why Todd Bowles is getting fired. Because he doesn't know how to explain things. Because if he's dumb enough to actually mean that, then I'm not going to put my $77 million corner on Watkins because he's on the other side. Then that's why Todd Bowles is getting fired. So I don't think the Eagles will do that. I don't think they're dumb enough to do that. And then, look, they don't have a Tremaine Johnson, but you would think that they would be smart enough to put 2 or 3 guys and force Deshaun Watson to go somewhere else.
Although, I mean, just looking at the latest injury news from Houston, the chance Lamar Miller is going to play this week, the chance Donta Foreman is going to play this week, and there's a chance that Kiki Kute will get back in the lineup as well. Those are 3 potential impact players for the Texans if they're healthy enough to suit up.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, Foreman and Blue will be the guys. I know Watkins is also dealing with an injury. Hopkins. I keep saying Watkins. I mean Hopkins. He's dealing with an injury, but he'll be fine. I don't think there's any.
Yeah, he's got an ankle. He was a limited practice participant.
Yeah, I think he'll play. Yeah. Miller's
11
the one.
targets, 10 catches last week.
Yeah, Miller's the one. Miller's the key. If Miller plays, then I'm not as high on this game. If Miller doesn't play, then I really like the Eagles. Okay, let's go to the next game, and that one is going to be Pittsburgh and New Orleans. And this one is a late game on Sunday. Steelers come off the big ugly win against the Patriots. That you know what I don't know about you, but by the time that game was over, what my impression was, I was looking at two of the great teams over the past 10 years, 15 years with Roethlisberger and Brady. We were looking at the beginning of the end for these two teams. That maybe they've got one more left in them this season. Maybe. I just doubt it. That was an ugly football game. I don't think either team has what it takes to win a Super Bowl after watching that game. But the problem is the Saints offense has done nothing for the past 3 weeks. Their offensive line's banged up. They were lucky to beat Carolina. They do have the first seed, and even though they're only a game ahead of the Rams standings-wise, they're 2 up. So they have nothing to worry about. They're going to wind up with the number 1 seed. This is a bigger game for Pittsburgh. They're definitely the best money line upset team of the week based on their talent. And that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to take the Steelers. I'm not overly excited about taking the Steelers, but I just don't think the Saints are playing all that great. So I think the Steelers could win this game.
And it's funny, the perspective, different perspectives. Because other people I've talked to this week are like, oh, my God, how did the Saints not cover? They said they were lucky to win. They were laying, close to a touchdown
against Carolina?
That game at Carolina. And, of course, they fumbled the ball through the end zone,
sure,
which would have been a point spread cover. So you say, oh, my God, the Saints dominated that game. They should have covered. They did a bad fumble. And you say, oh, they were lucky to win. Both of which are kind of true. Because for as bad as the Saints' offense has played, and I'm telling you, I mean, the cracks are there right now for New Orleans. And it's twofold. One, you talk about the injuries on the offensive line. Two is Drew Brees does not have the downfield weapons that the better Saints offenses have had.
No.
That the Super Bowl Saints team had. I mean, it's Thomas and pray for rain for New Orleans. In terms of the downfield game, it's all dink and dunk right now. However, their defense has held their last 6 opponents to 14-7, 17-13, 14-9. And despite the fact that the offense has been struggling, they've been good enough to win 5 of the 6 games in straight-up fashion.
Sure.
So, for all these issues with the Saints on offense, their defense has been stellar. And for as ugly as the game was last week, the Steelers' defense has really been pretty darn good, too. They had that one late-game meltdown against the Chargers, but that's it. Over the last 2 months, there's been one shutdown effort after the next. I guess they had a little problem in Oakland in a really bad spot, but we saw last week what they did to Tom Brady. That's what Pittsburgh's defense is capable of doing. Saints' offense is out of sync. Steelers' offense is out of sync. Can you play Big Ben and Drew Brees under the total?
Yeah, right.
Do
you have the guts to do it?
Probably the way I would look.
Right.
It's as ugly as that sounds. And, of course, you're talking 53 and a half. So there's some wiggle room there if it turns into a field goal fest as opposed to a touchdown fest.
Yeah, I would actually. You know what? That big of a number, I'd go under. I would. I'm not a total guy, but I expect this game to be like what the numbers you were just telling me. I expect it to be 20-17, something like that. So, By the way, Pittsburgh, knowing the result of the Baltimore game on Saturday, keep in mind if Baltimore loses, and they're dog to lose, Pittsburgh can still lose and then beat the Bengals next week at home, and then they win the division. So
it takes the pressure off.
Takes the pressure off, absolutely. All right, but if Baltimore wins, that's different. All right, Kansas City and Seattle is the last big one, and this is Sunday night, and now all of a sudden, look, it's the Chiefs and the Rams just haven't been the same since they played each other. Matter of fact, we can go back. The Chiefs have not covered 4 straight games as a favorite. They're 2-2 straight up, 0-3-1 ATS last 4 overall. They have the number 1 seed, as I mentioned, though. They could end up with the number 5 seed if they lose one of these games and the Chargers win. So same thing, if the Chargers wind up winning now, the pressure goes on Kansas City to win this football game, or else they could be a 5 seed. They're dealing with some injuries, and of course, the running back situation is nowhere near as good as it was, and that could be part of the issue. Seattle, I don't look. If they play a bad game here, and I'm talking like a bad game, that'd be different. I don't expect it. I just think they had one of those games. Remember, we talked about this last week. We were wondering, is that the line was small? There's something happening here. They had just come off a Monday night win at home. They're on the road. They had just clobbered this team a week ago. Something's not right. And sure enough, Seattle didn't play well. So I kind of dismissed that. They're back home, national TV. They basically win the game. They're in the playoffs because they got Arizona at home next. And they could even clinch possibly this week if they win. So huge game for Seattle. I expect them to play really well. It's only 2.5, though, for the Chiefs. Boy, is that enticing to take the Chiefs as a 2.5-point favorite in this spot. I just don't like the way they're playing, so I'll take Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, Seahawks, the biggest issue last week was penalties. And of course, this was the most
that last one
team
was a killer in overtime. That pass.
Sure, that was the 14th of the game.
Yeah.
They survived 13 of them. They couldn't survive 14 of them. But, that's been a consistent problem for Pete Carroll. They were the most penalized team in the NFL in 2017. They rank among the leaders again here in 2018. Did you see Chris Carson's touchdown run last week?
Yeah, that was awesome.
Might have been play of the year. I remember watching Barry Sanders on a negative 2-yard. He ended up with a negative 2-yard carry. And I'm like, that was the best 2-yard loss in the NFL that I've ever seen. Carson's 1-yard touchdown run on 4th and 1. That was the best 1-yard run in the NFL I've ever seen in my life.
Especially since it was 4th down.
Exactly. He knew this is our. We need it. We need it here now. The old refuse to lose. I mean, when you get hit by 8 guys when you touch the ball in the backfield, somehow escape that and then hit again and then find a way to stretch it over. It was insane.
Yep.
That shows the Seahawks mentality right now. I thought that play really did. This is a hungry team. I don't think there's any question about it. Unfortunately, I don't think they're the better of the two squads. And KC now coming off a loss. And what are they? 3 losses this year by a grand total of 7 points. And last week they let that, they gave that game away. They gave it away. Poor defense down the stretch, a bad set of play calls. They had, was it a penalty or I think it was a penalty on their drive when they had a chance to ice it. And they were pushed into, the 2nd and 20 or whatever.
Well, the Chargers had that 4th down 20-yard pass, too.
Yeah, they sure did.
Final drive. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, KC, the breaks did not go their way down the stretch of that ball game. Frustrated, extra time to prep for this one off the Thursday night. And again, you're talking about a point spread range where all you got to do is pick the winner, basically.
Basically, sure.
And I think the Chiefs are better than Seattle. I really do. I wanted to ask you, we talked earlier, Phillip Rivers or Russell Wilson, one game today?
Today, right now, the way they're playing?
Yep.
Who do I take, Russell Wilson or Phillip Rivers right now? Today, I'm taking. Oh, that's close.
It's a hard question, isn't it?
It's tough again based on. All right, if I were taking them off those respective teams, and I'm building a team, and I need a win today.
Yeah.
I'm going to take. You know what? In all honesty, I got to go with Russell Wilson, just based on
exactly. Me too.
Yeah.
And it's not even close. I mean, you debated longer than I did.
Well, I did it because I had to wait to take them off their teams and just say, if I'm building my own team, where am I going? Because the team thing was kind of in my way. So yeah.
Yeah. But you were talking about how is Russell Wilson elite?
Sure. Yeah, he's
is Patrick Mahomes elite? Is Phillip Rivers? I mean, or if you were asking about Phillip Rivers, I would put Wilson in the top category. I would put him in the same category as the Bradys and the Roethlisbergers of the world and the Breezes.
Yeah, so you have a little bit more leeway than I do on the elites, but I hear what you're saying though. I mean, the guy's won a couple Super Bowls, and he should have won a couple Super Bowls, but he's talented. He's played with a lot less than those guys.
Yes.
So that's
all that being said, I think the Chiefs are the better team. It's not a game I'm going to play. It's not a bet I'm going to get involved with.
All right.
Interesting game to watch, but not.
Oh,
not
yeah,
a game
should be, absolutely. Quickly just going through Bears, Niners, and just like Seattle, a low number, but this one I think is different, which is why I like Chicago. It's only 4, so how do I not? And here's one of the reasons why. I think I've liked this trend. I haven't really looked at it, but I like this. San Francisco, I'm all of a sudden becoming, when I see a team in their 3rd straight home game, I like to go against them. So I'm going with the Bears here. San Francisco trying to win 3 straight on their 3rd straight home game. So I kind of like that. And Bears have been playing great football.
Yeah, not a chance I lay points with the Bears on the road this week. The Bears are Seattle this week in terms of a spot.
So you think this is the same spot for them?
Oh, I think it's worse.
Why? Because of beating the Packers, clinching.
What
the
is it? Yeah,
playoffs.
the Bears just had the biggest win they've had in 15 years, or 10, since they went to the Super Bowl. Literally, to beat the Packers the way that they did and to clinch the division. I mean, did you see that the Trubisky with the Christmas sweater with the lights and all that? That team was, pardon my expression, they were partying their asses off. I mean, I don't trust their focus this week one bit, certainly not to lay more than a field goal. I really wanted to make a big bet on the 49ers until I read the quotes out of San Fran. Right. And it was almost the same thing because they just beat Seattle. They're like, the Seahawks have beaten us 9 straight times. We're going to celebrate. This was huge, the biggest win we've had all year.
That's true.
So I worry about San Fran being flat too.
Yeah.
Under.
And third straight game at home too concerns me. That always seems to be a concern. And by the way, the Bears, if the Rams do lose one of the next 2 weeks, Bears can all of a sudden find their way into a bye as long as they win their last 2. So, and the byes are big. I don't think anything else is big in the NFL 1 through 6 except byes. Byes are the big things. Once you get to 3 to 6, I don't think the players care. I
don't think they care either. That being said, I honestly think the coaches care a lot more about that stuff than players do.
I agree.
Players did their job. They got, hey, we're in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree.
And the media fixates on that a lot of times, and I don't think that there's any thought about that in the locker room. And of course, when the media fixates on it, the point spread fixates on it as well.
All right. I expect Miami to kill Jacksonville this week. Jacksonville is dead. They're a dead dog. They're also 0-3 straight up ATS as a road dog this year. Miami 6-1 straight up ATS at home this year. They're a 4-point favorite. They're still fighting for their lives. Jacksonville's like I said, they're just a dead dog. I think Miami's going to kill them.
I've been betting against the Jacksonville Jaguars on a weekly basis. I certainly won't try to talk you out of it. Jacksonville's, fading the Jags has been a nice moneymaker for my clients and I for a good portion of the season. All that being said, before you say, all right, let's lay points with Miami, here's your Dolphins trend, okay?
Okay.
0-18 against the spread as favorites off a game in which they lost and never led.
Oh, that's like a Mark Lawrence historical thing.
This has not been Miami's role over the years.
Okay,
let's just put it that
interesting. All right, I'll remember that when they win by 3. Okay. I think Minnesota. I think now that they've changed coordinators, what a week makes when you change coordinators and you start running the football. Now look, Dolphins can't play run defense, but it was a good matchup, and they got their confidence back. Detroit's they're banged up. They're not going anywhere. They're 0-5 straight up ATS last 5 versus teams that are better than 500. I like the Vikings in this one.
Yeah, but they sacked Matthew Stafford 10 times in the first meeting.
Oh, did they really? Okay.
Yeah, they ate him up, and it wasn't that long ago.
Right.
So it's a tough game for me. I'm not going to lay with it. This is not a value price with the Vikings. From a pure power rating perspective, Minnesota should be 3 or 4 here, and they're 6 right now. So you're laying a premium for the must-win Vikings in the must-win spot.
Yeah. Because Detroit's not that. I mean, they're still playing hard. Their defense is still playing pretty well. So it's not like they're getting blown out every week.
Sure. And, for this Vikings team against Miami last week, we just talked it couldn't have been a worse spot for the Dolphins.
No, we talked about that.
Coming off a miracle win against New England, as fat and happy as it ever gets, now you're going on the road in the cold.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Worst spot ever. But now people are like, oh, Minnesota's good. Minnesota's good again.
Yeah, well, it's not going to carry too much away, but yeah.
Exactly. It was the wrong team at the wrong time. I do not trust the Vikings.
But that's why road chalk. Yeah, the odds got carried away. That's the point.
Sure. Look ahead line here was Minnesota -3.
Yeah, that'd be a lot better.
That was when I said look ahead line. That's the number on the game the week before it was played. So these are bettable numbers here in Vegas that you can bet on the next week's games before the prior week. It just gives you gives you an idea of how much of a market change there was off a single week.
Yeah.
And here in Minnesota, it's just as no injury issues, nothing except for Minnesota won and Detroit lost, and now -3 on the road is -6 on the road, based just on those two circumstances.
Rams, big number, but let's keep in mind they've beaten Arizona the last 3 by a 99-16 margin. They have got to show something this week and get something going. Arizona looks like they're already going to fire their head coach. They got a ton of injuries, a rookie quarterback. I'll tell you what, if the Rams don't blow out Arizona, they really are in trouble.
I mean, we've seen Arizona beat Green Bay a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and look what happened to Mike McCarthy after that game.
Since that time, they've been outscored 57-17 by the Lions and Falcons, two non-playoff teams.
Lions. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, but I mean,
not good. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a big number.
It's
a big number.
It's a big number for an offense that's looked broken.
Yeah.
LA's offense has been flat out broken.
This says more about Arizona than it does the Rams, for me. Yeah. I mean, that's why I'm saying if the Rams can't win by double digits in this game, they are really in trouble. So, because if this game was played a month ago, the line would probably be 20. The way the Rams
played at home they played Arizona at home in week 2. They won that game 34-0.
Yeah.
Since that time,
yeah,
they have covered against this point spread at -14 or higher.
Okay.
They would have covered a grand total of 1 point spread since.
Yeah, that
was week 2.
Sure.
They beat Oakland week 1. They beat Arizona week 2 by 20+. Since that time, one win by more than 2 TDs. That came against the 49ers. So
yeah,
it's circle the wagons time, all of that for L.A. Well, it was circle the wagons time last week. They lost straight up as 13-point chalk. They're supposed to win this game by 4 touchdowns.
They are.
They did in the first meeting.
Yeah.
They beat them by 5 touchdowns in the first meeting. They can do it again here if we see the Jared Goff that has been good, not the Jared Goff that's looked completely lost for the better part of the last month.
Yeah, Rams just 2-8-1 ATS last 9. And 2 more quick ones, 2 more quick points I want to make. 2 teams not playing all that well, fighting for the first pick in the draft. I'm actually going to pick this week. I'm going with the Jets and the Raiders because I think Denver and Green Bay are done, and I think the Raiders and the Jets are still trying to win football games because they're trying to rebuild. So I actually like the Jets and the Raiders. Packers haven't won a road game all year, and Denver's done. But then as far as the upsets, the 2 upsets, I don't know, which one do you think you would lean towards more? Because I'm actually going to go with both Buffalo and the Bengals.
It's funny you talk about those two. The outright upset, I would have to take Cincinnati.
Okay. But you see where I'm coming from.
I think the Bills are live in that game against the Patriots. I do.
Okay.
And don't underestimate the loss of Josh Gordon for a passing game that's not in sync. Josh Gordon matters. He's an impact player.
No, absolutely. I mean,
the Patriots are going to miss him.
And McCoy should be back. And Bills have actually played the Patriots better in New England over the last 10 years or so, or 5 or 6, 7 years, whatever it is. Plus, let's keep in mind they've covered both, and I talked about a win, but they did beat Minnesota as a double-digit road team a long time ago with Josh Allen, and they've covered both games on the road as double-digit dogs. Meanwhile, the reason why I'm thinking about Cincinnati is because Cleveland was not even a favorite in the NFL since this year, since 2015. Now all of a sudden we're supposed to give 9.5 in a football game against a team that hasn't quit. I mean, the Bengals have actually played pretty well the last couple of weeks, considering they have Jeff Driscoll.
And they will remember.
They will. That's right.
In terms of the divisional foe, they're going to remember the insults and funny business that happened in that.
That's right. Baker Mayfield, dissing Jackson, absolutely. Yeah. All right, great job as always, Ted. Appreciate it. Best of luck with the games. I know these aren't your. This isn't your. You're not really psyched about this week's games as much as I am. So
it's hard. It's a hard week as a handicapper. There's not. A lot of times. when we talk on Thursday, a lot of hey, my card's all set. I know exactly what I'm doing. I've made a bunch of bets.
Yep.
This week, it's not. It's been slim pickings so far in terms of stuff I'm excited about. But the good news is that the markets are still moving. So I'm sure we'll find something between now and Sunday.
Thanks a lot, Ted. I appreciate it.
Cheers.
All right, that's Ted Sevransky, a.k.a. Teddy Covers. And Ted's with us every Thursday here on OFN Today. You can follow Ted on Twitter at Teddy_covers. Again, at Teddy_covers. So Teddy's worked on different top sites like ESPN. He was actually featured on an ESPN 30 for 30, as well as CBS, Bloomberg TV, and CNBC. So Teddy has been in the business a very long time, very well respected, and he always does a great job here on our show. All right, so going a little long on this segment. So but as I promised in the very beginning, even though this segment lasted a little bit longer than we thought, we are going to talk some fantasy football with Scott Engel because this is it. This is championship week in fantasy football. So instead of talking early in the week, wanted to get Scott on here with just a few days to go, just 2 days to go before championship week kicks off on Saturday. So Scott, appreciate you hanging in there and joining us again this week. One last week to talk fantasy football with you. Championship week, how many championship games do you have, Scott?
10 leagues have made the playoffs in 7, made the quarterfinals in 6, and playing in 5 Super Bowls this week.
All right. So 5 out of how many?
10.
5 out of 10, 50%. And is that where would you put that for your normal year over the years? A good year, an average year?
I think it's above average.
Above average, okay.
I think my best year was 2005 of all time. I was in 12 leagues. I made the playoffs in 10. I made the quarterfinals in 8. Made the Super Bowl in 6 and won 4 of them.
So you won.
And I had an undefeated season, which is very hard.
Wow. Okay. And when you do your leagues, do all 12 of them, are they all pretty similar as far as scoring and everything and rules?
No, some of them are like 2 quarterback leagues, etc. Others are auctions, so there's differences.
They are, okay. And do you have, are all of them just whoever wins week to week championship, or does some also have to do with how many points you total during the year?
No, they're all head-to-head.
Head-to-head, okay.
I don't play total points. It's strictly head-to-head.
Okay. Now, we talked earlier in the week because I'm only in one league, so I have this league where I'm in the playoffs. I've now lost another superstar. I went into last week. Now, I was lucky enough, even though I had some bad things happen to me this past week, which I felt would have made things easier for me to win my semifinal game. But I basically went in and because of the Aaron Jones injury, I was basically playing a man down for the week, and yet I still found a way to be tied. And I'm happy for that. I was tied with a man down, and I'm good. So, but the interesting thing is the tie procedure, the rules of a tie in the regular season compared to the playoffs, and we were talking about that. So anybody out there that may have never experienced this before, or maybe they got to prepare for this one day, first of all, explain the differences, if there should be, between tie rules in the regular season compared to the postseason, and what options that owners should have in leagues in order to rectify this.
Well, this has to be set in the summer, and you're in big trouble if you're dealing with it right now.
Sure.
You shouldn't be, good commissioner sets up everything before the season. Regular season, you can certainly have ties, but you'll avoid ties, though, if you play on a league commissioner that has decimal scoring. You'll avoid the ties altogether.
Now, why wouldn't you put decimal scoring in? Is there a reason why anybody wouldn't want to put decimal scoring in?
To be honest with you, I don't have an answer for that necessarily.
Okay.
A lot of the leagues, just about every league I play in right now has decimal scoring, so if you're not doing it, you're behind the times.
Okay.
Because that became a thing, and people just didn't want ties anymore. And you're really not seeing it with this decimal scoring in a lot of fantasy.
Oh, why? Is decimal scoring like just recent in the past few years, or how was that? Is that always
not
been?
recent, but I think more people have caught on to it in the
Okay.
last few years.
Okay.
Like you look at certain commissioners, like CBS's default is not for decimal scoring. I'm not sure if you can set it up that way. ESPN, all of those that I play in, Yahoo, NFL.com, it all seems to have decimal scoring set up. So that's the best way to avoid ties is set your league commissioner up for decimal scoring. If not, you allow ties during the regular season, but in the playoffs, there has to be some sort of tiebreaker that's established. And I think the higher regular season seed should probably win out. That's the only fair way to do it. I mean, there's bench points, but I don't think that's fair. Some people go by quarterback points and running back points. I think the only fair way to do it is to award it to the higher seed.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. That the higher seed has proven it all year. They're the better team going into the game. You should have to beat that team. And if you can't, if it's a tie, outright. If it's a tie or a loss, sort of like the Ryder Cup, that's what they do. These other big events. If it's a tie, it goes to the team who already won the previous time, or the team that's better the previous. Going into it. So yeah, I agree with that. Now, your solution with me, because unfortunately my commissioner, and I'm in a league, as I said before, that's been going on for like 25 years. So it's one of those leagues that's like, everybody started in a living room somewhere. And so they have a lot of unique little rules. It's fun. Everything's great about it, but they not everything is put online, and this particular commissioner kept a few things just to himself, or I'm sure we debated it at some point, because we debate stuff all the time with new rules every year, and I'm sure he just jotted it down somewhere and we just all agreed to it. Might have happened a couple of years ago and nobody remembered. He didn't put it on the website, and then he died about a month ago, which was real sad. Everybody's just
terrible.
Everybody just out of nowhere, and everybody just devastated that it happened. Like I said, these guys know each other.
Are you gonna rename the league like in his honor?
Yes, that's what one of the guys suggested.
League?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what one of the guys suggested, which is a great idea. So anyway, so we were searching. We looked on the site. It didn't say it. So this is the dilemma we were in. But we talked, you and I, and you had the suggestion in this situation that we should do basically a 3-team runoff next week, with the 2 tie teams against the team that won the semifinal game, and those 3 teams go up against each other, and the team with the highest point total wins the championship. The team with the second highest total gets the second prize. And actually, the way we're doing it is the team with the third highest will go a runoff with the team that was 4th, just to make it fair for that 4th team. But anyway, the bottom line is that we're doing a 3-team runoff this week, which is it's kind of fun, it's unique, it's interesting, but it's not really where you want to be.
Yeah, this is the week though that you're just glad you're playing in a way.
That's my point. That was my initial point. I was happy I'm there.
Yeah.
I lost Aaron Jones. I'm happy.
Week. This is a spotlight week on the fantasy sports calendar. This is the week that everybody wants to be playing in. It's Fantasy Super Bowl week.
Yes.
Week 16 of the NFL regular season. This is where this is what you strive for. This is what you play for.
Yep.
To be playing in week 16. More than any other week in fantasy sports, you want to be playing in this week.
Absolutely. And I've actually also because one of the things that happens sometimes, and I've learned this just made sure going into my drafts the last few years how important it was for me to build depth on my team, because I had just been the injuries have killed me over the years. I've had to make trades. I've had to do this, and a lot of those times I don't win championships. You just can't when you get these significant trades and you have enough depth. So depth has always been a very big concern for me. I didn't care. I felt, okay, I can blindfoldly take good players in the top 5 or 6. But I got to make sure that I get good depth. That was how I strategize going into these drafts the last few years, is who's available after that, and who do I think can I actually work with. And it worked for me because I lost Cooper Kupp, A.J. Green, and now Aaron Jones in the same year. Aaron Jones, of course, almost cost me the championship last week. And then I also didn't have Melvin Gordon play the last 3 weeks. I get him back this week, thank goodness. But for me to be in the championship while losing that, that's just because I've been very fortunate to have pretty good depth, make a couple decent pickups during the season. And that's something I think sometimes it gets lost on a lot of people when they go into drafts. They concentrate all their stuff on their starters and maybe not enough on the depth. So sometimes you almost get, you could sense sometimes people get a little bored or they just want to, let's just get this over with. But, that 10th pick, that 11th pick is just as important sometimes than the 3rd or 4th pick.
Yeah, and at draft day, people get so hung up on the entire season. They start looking at, I don't want to have the same guys on buys in week 8. Oh, I'm looking at the playoff schedule, week 14 and 16. That's wasted exercise because we really don't see the full trends develop until the first 4 or 5 weeks. You can't base your playoff schedule matchups on last year. Then people say they're worried about bye weeks. By the time the buys roll around, your team may have changed a lot.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Trade
yeah.
And waivers.
Yeah.
Getting to the fantasy Super Bowl is so much work. They built the foundation in the summer, but you don't get to the Super Bowl if you're not making savvy trades and working the waiver wire.
Now, as far as this week, you have, I mentioned Aaron Jones out, so Williams gets the start against the Jets, and I'm sure he was probably on a lot of scrap heaps this week. So if you're looking for a running back, and you might be, you're looking around, you got Lamar Miller's not feeling all that well. Ware may not play again. So if you don't have Damian Williams, that could be an issue. Gurley, do you know if he's going to play the whole game, even though he's supposed to start? So Williams becomes a factor, and maybe even all of a sudden, I don't know if I trust Tevin Coleman after one game, after what happened, but at least there's no Ito Smith, so he's going to get more carries. Who do you think right now as far as – because I got to believe Williams and Coleman were 2 of the hot pickups this week. Are there anybody else out there that you would consider that if there are guys, starter guys that are out, that could possibly help you this week?
Yeah, I don't think Coleman was available on a lot of free agent lists. Williams was the hot pickup because Aaron Jones went down. The Jets are 10th against opposing running backs, but he still has potential to score. So he's like a low-end RB2 flex, and with Aaron Rodgers being banged up, maybe they'll lean on the run a little bit more. The other guy, there's not too much at the waiver wire this time of year,
sure,
unless you suffered an injury, like you said.
Yeah.
Caleb Ballage of the Miami Dolphins had 123 rushing yards on 12 carries last week, and he also had that included a 75-yard touchdown run. But, you talk about a one-game sample size, and people talk about how the Jacksonville defense hasn't shown up. Well, in their last 6 games, outside of the Derrick Henry explosion, they haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher or a rushing touchdown. So
okay.
I think you got to be careful about using Caleb Ballage.
And then what do you do? I guess you wait to the last minute if you got LaShawn McCoy. He's.
I don't think if you have LaShawn McCoy that you've advanced to your fantasy Super Bowl with him as a central figure or even a contributing figure. So
okay. I
think a lot of people are not even concerned about that. If you've been starting LaShawn McCoy, you're probably eliminated.
How about Lamar Miller?
I think we got to wait and see on him, but
I know it's an iffy proposition right now.
Whether he's going to play or not.
Yeah,
I can't predict if he's going to play or not, and you got to prepare right now as we talk about this. Like,
sure,
you're going to have to prepare without him. I don't think he's a terrific start even if he plays.
All right, and as far as receivers, it looks like Keenan Allen's going to be back, so that's looking good there. Hopkins
it's not looking good necessarily, though. And my lineup ranks on RotoExperts.com, I have him at number 19. Inside injuries are saying that's hip pointers, a very, very painful injury to play through. So, he may not fully be himself.
And the whole Mike Williams thing, after the performance he had, I was just talking to Teddy about that earlier on the show. I just could not understand all season what was going on with Mike Williams. I had Mike Williams on my team. He's been my backup most of the season. I've started him a couple of weeks, and he's done nothing. Always thrown a touchdown and a couple of points. and I'm sitting there and I'm wondering what is going on. I guess there's something wrong with him. He's just it's got to be him. And then Allen goes down, and Williams all of a sudden plays exactly the way that I thought that he would play. This has got to be Ken Wisenhunt's fault. I mean, how now you've got Mike Williams and Keenan Allen on the field. Why isn't his offense more explosive as far as the passing game?
He really missed his entire rookie season. Is essentially his rookie year. And, these young guys are very, very inconsistent. We've seen it. We've talked about rookies. This guy is an unofficial rookie. And he had to step forward with Keenan Allen out. He just doesn't get as many looks with Keenan Allen in there. And I don't know how much you can trust him this week against the Ravens, who are best against opposing fantasy wide receivers in terms of points per game allowed.
Yeah. Again, unless you've got injuries, and you've got. Let me ask you, if because these guys are all guys that have had to pick up as backups with all the injuries I said I have, especially at receiver. So who would you go with? Would you go with Robbie Anderson, Dante Pettis, or Mike Williams?
I would go with Robbie Anderson. He's woken up the last 2 weeks, and the Packers are I think 27th against opposing fantasy wide receivers.
All right, and Connor, does it look like he's going to play for Pittsburgh? That's another game time probable decision.
No, it'll be Jalen Samuels again. Fire him up at tight end on Yahoo Sports.
Another big bonus for anybody that's been able to take advantage of that. Do you do anything differently with anybody considering the Patriots receiver situation now that Gordon's out of the picture? Gronk's doing nothing. Edelman's banged up. If Chris Hogan is your backup, do you consider starting him?
No, not whatsoever. It's he might get more of an opportunity, but he's had his opportunities and he cashed in on him. There's no way you can use him. Edelman's not banged up to the point where it's really going to affect him. He's going to play through it. He'll be in and out of games, but he's still going to play at a pretty high level. So I'm not worried about Julian Edelman. I don't know. Maybe it would help James White more, but you can't rely on that. This New England offense is not looking too good. The names are bigger than the production at this point.
And if you have someone like Jared Goff as your starting quarterback, and I don't know, maybe you've got we've talked the last month about having decent backup options. Do you, because of Goff's status, the way he's played all year, do you just ride him? Or do you consider?
I think it depends on what the other options are.
So you do consider it. Okay.
I'd start Jeremy Mayfield over him. I'd start Lamar Jackson over him, but not Josh Allen. I have him 11th. He did throw for over 300 yards last time against Arizona, but just one touchdown pass. So he's a back-end QB1 this week. I would start him over, say, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and Josh Allen, because I worry about Josh Allen against Belichick's scheming against a rookie quarterback. You still got to be concerned about that. But I'd rather use Baker Mayfield than him.
All right, sounds good. So all in all, appreciate everything that you've been able to do for us here on the network and obviously on these shows as well, Scott. Best of luck in your 5 championship games, and we'll talk again at some point soon. No question about that. And what do you do when the season's over? And by the way, what options are there as far as the actual NFL playoffs are concerned?
We'll have a lot of advice for Daily at dailyroto.com. People will draft in playoff pools, and we also pay attention to NFL year round on our site, Roto Experts and Daily Roto. But personally, I start getting ready for fantasy baseball, play some fantasy basketball, and start getting ready for fantasy NASCAR.
All right, I'll keep that in mind. NASCAR. We have NASCAR coverage on here, so we should definitely talk about that. That would be interesting. But all in all, though,
definitely, it's over at the Fantasy Sports Network. My son, Sean Engel, he's a NASCAR whiz who's won 5 tournaments in DraftKings, and we do a show together called the Father and Son Fantasy NASCAR Hour.
Really? Okay. I'll check that out. Yeah. We'll talk, no question. All right, sounds good. And by the way, for anybody that has, and one of these years, I keep saying it, I got to get into one of these, whatever you call it. I don't know what's the term? Not keeper league. That's an old term. What's the new term? Everybody?
Dynasty.
Dynasty. There you go. I got to get into one of those. So anybody there's a dynasty, that's what that's for, right, Scott? It's about, in other words, like you were talking about having the information.
It's like building a real team.
Yes. So free agency, draft, and all that, that's very important, which is why you have all that news. You keep news all year long for people who definitely have to make sure that they understand how to maintain their rosters for the dynasty leagues.
Yes, and go to Roto Experts and check out my complete guide to surviving fantasy Super Bowl week. Don't overthink things. Don't worry too much about the other team.
That's just a couple of tips. I've looked at them all. Check it out. Scott, appreciate it. We'll talk to you again sometime soon.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Scott. Yes, you too. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. And good to have Scott on this season because I don't think we've had anybody on. I know last year we did a fantasy show, but we haven't had an actual guest on like Scott on the network here, and not just the network. Of course, we've only had the Ourlads Football Network running for the last couple of years. But my network, the other sports network, a Prime Sports Network. So good to have Scott on, somebody that has been around a long time and is in the expert field of fantasy football. Not somebody that has, I do this part-time and I do this as a hobby. I mean, this is what Scott does for a living. He's done it for a long time. This is a serious deal for Scott. This is what pays his bills, and we're happy to have his expertise on the network this season. So, and look, it's the first time, and I guarantee you that as we move ahead here on the Ourlads Football Network with everything we're doing, and as I mentioned, of course, with NASCAR on my other network, at Prime Sports Network, we're going to be building a good relationship here with Scott, and I'm looking forward to that. All right, so coming up, we've got our OFN College Football Weekly with Mitch Light. That's a little bit later on, so we'll talk college football. ACC Football Report is tomorrow with Jerry Radcliffe. And I want to thank Teddy Sevransky from Covers.com as well. So for Ted Covers, for Scott Engel, I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for listening to OFN Today on the Ourlads Football Radio Network. It's Alpha Mike Foxtrot.